What if you could know exactly how many loans and deposits your website is losing right now? What would you do? Would you take immediate action to eliminate those blind spots, to close those gaps? Would you wait for more information? Maybe would you do nothing at all? Well, this is exactly what we're going to be talking about on today's episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
You're listening to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
Welcome back to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. I'm James Arbert Lay, founder and CEO of the Digital Growth Institute, where we help financial brands uncover their biggest marketing and sales blind spots so that they can quickly stop losing loans and deposits. Now, before we get into today's episode, I want to invite you to be one of 100 financial brands that I'll be guiding in 2025 through the 2025 Digital Growth Accelerator. I want to be very clear. The 2025 Digital Growth Accelerator is only for growth-minded financial brand marketing, sales, and leadership teams who want to thrive and not just survive in 2025. So if this sounds like you, if this sounds like your team, text me right now, 832-549-5792, and let's just have a conversation to see if this is a good fit for you, if it's a good fit for your team. Joining me for today's conversation is Derek Kraus, shareholder and senior website consultant at Bloom CU. Welcome to the show, Derek. It is great to share time with you today, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. You and I we've been having a lot of great conversations, great dialogues, discussions, and text messages. I think you and I have talked a couple of times over the phone. You had attended a couple of the roundtables that we had hosted a month or two ago. And I really appreciate the thinking that you have shared with me, the truth you've shared with me, the honesty that you shared with me. And I was like, finally, I was like, you know what? Let's just have a conversation, and we're going to see where this thing lands. As all conversations I do on the podcast, they're not pre-planned. They're not pre-scripted. I know there's one thing that I'm wanting to really dive deep into, specifically with what you're seeing, with what you're observing through the work that you've been doing to help financial brands optimize their digital experiences and to build websites specifically around the A/B testing side of things. And before we get too far into that, what is good for you right now? Because you and I, as of recording, we're kicking off the last quarter. It's Q4 of 2024. It's October 1st, and we've got 90 days left. Actually, 91 to be exact. Tomorrow will be 90 days left of the year, but we've got 91 days left. What has been good for you? What's been, looking back, what are you feeling positive about right now as we start our conversation?
Well, the most recent good thing is last night we had my son's 8th birthday party, and it was a Star Wars birthday party, and I got to play Darth Vader and battle about 20 kids with lightsabers, and that was a pretty fun time. So,
Oh my gosh. Like I'm thinking to myself, where's my invite? Because I was the Star Wars nerd growing up back in the 80s. Like I had the Star Wars birthday parties. And this was the original, like this was episode 4, 5, and 6. And then my kids just never really got into it.
oh, really?
They just never got that deep into the Star Wars mythology and the Star
The
Wars lore.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm so happy that you were able to have that shared experience with your son for his eighth birthday party. That's absolutely amazing. Now you were Darth Vader. I've dressed up as Darth Vader. I gotta say, who won? Was it the dark side? Was the light?
Oh, I definitely won.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
I beat all of the. I was slicing all of them with my lightsaber.
I love it. I love it. And it's that idea. We got to make time for play. We've got to make time for fun. We can't take ourselves way too seriously. That's something that I have continued to work on, and it's been one of the lessons that I've learned over the years, particularly within the last few years. And my kids have been so gracious and helpful. Even my oldest, who's 14 now, he said, "Dad, what time are you coming home from the office today?" I said, "I'll probably leave about 5:30 or so." And I live like 10 minutes from the office, and it's just enough time to decompress and shift gears.
Yeah.
And but not like this long commute. And he said, "Good. You think we can play Mario Kart?" tonight, and I have 4 kids, and we always like playing Mario Kart because we get all 4 of us on there, and one of them sits out, and the loser who has to let the next
Uh-huh.
person slot in. Dad gets a pass. Like I get to play everyone, so I never, even if they beat me, which they typically do, I'm never the one sitting out. I mean, that idea of learning. I mean, if you think about this year yourself and the work that you've been doing, what has been the biggest lesson that you've learned in reflection of the year so far?
Yeah, I mean, as far as in my work, I think the thing I've learned is that in the introduction you mentioned that we work with credit unions on their websites. So we build websites and we do A/B testing on websites. And I think the most important thing that has been really driven home for me is that credit unions and banks uh, should be getting ROI, return on investment, from their websites and from the optimization that they do on their websites. And that's something that we've actually we've kind of been chasing that for years, but it's been hard to get all the pieces to click together to get that data for credit unions or from credit unions. But just this year, we've found a way to really start to uh, estimate that in an accurate way.
Mm.
And I think it's a game changer because it changes the way that you look at, the way that most financial institutions are looking at their websites is almost like a work of art. Uh, they're seeing the front end of it and what it looks like and judging it to say, is it good or bad based on what it looks like? And I believe that visual appeal is very important, but at the end of the day, really the way that you need to judge your website uh, is it helping you grow, and not in like a yeah, I think it's helping me grow sort of way, but quantifiably, can you quantify the growth that you're getting from it right now and the growth that you should be getting from it?
I really appreciate that, the idea, and you're helping them see things differently. And that is the first of 4 steps for human transformation, as I wrote in my second book, Banking on Change. To inspire human transformation of any kind, whether you're talking digital transformation, marketing, sales, culture, doesn't matter. We always have to see things from a different perspective because belief is what drives behavior. And if the
Hmm.
belief is that we have built, or we are currently building, a website to look good, and we'll just say a strategic goal, most likely probably driven from the marketing department, is to win an award, we're already
Hmm.
off on the wrong path. Um,
Does yeah.
I can tell you there was an organization that I had advised and coached for 7 years. Um, that's how we started working together. Was they had a couple on their team, attended one of our boot camps and accelerators. They came back. We got brought in to do some diagnostic work. One of the pieces of the diagnostic work we did was secret shopping their website. And so you talk about the quantitative. So we're looking at more of the qualitative, but getting in an outside perspective.
Hmm.
And before we delivered our findings and recommendations, I remember vividly their chief admin officer was feeling so confident about their website because it had just recently won a number of awards at industry events.
Hmm.
Then we came in and we did our findings and recommendations. And it was like, and to use her quote, because it's public, this is Mia Perez. She said it felt like a full body wax. It was that painful to hear what others thought about the website outside of their organization, outside of their marketing team. Why does this happen? Like, what drives that behavior to
Mm,
have something I wrote about in Banking on Digital Growth, to have a narcissistic approach to marketing, that it's all about us, but it's not. And if it's all about us, then it's going to definitely impact the work that you're doing, thinking about conversions, growth, the bottom line, the truth. What, in your experience, looking in retrospect, what drives the belief that drives the behavior?
mm. I think you see this in all industries and in all sorts of organizations where, you know, I am me. I'm my own individual, and all day it's my thoughts, and I'm thinking about what I need to do in the world and in my life. And I think most of our thoughts probably mostly revolve around ourselves,
Mm.
right? And so I think that that naturally gets translated over to marketing. And when you're inside of a company, you're thinking about, the thing that you're most intimately familiar with is uh, what your company does and what your company is about and the features that your company offers. And so I think it becomes very natural then for marketing to become about me, about what, about our organization, rather than about the people that you're trying to serve. And it takes a greater amount of empathy to put yourself in the shoes of the end user or the consumer, to think, well, what is it that they need and what is it they want. And I think where I think the ideal is when, now I think where sometimes people will say, well, uh, sometimes people think about that philosophy of that they need to put themselves in the shoes of the user, and then uh, they kind of like sacrifice themselves in order to do that. So then they're like, it doesn't matter who we are and what we want. All that matters is what the member or the end user wants. And I think actually where the magic happens is when an organization or an individual within an organization is their true authentic self, and they present that in a way that aligns with what other people want, them being their true authentic selves. And so you're not trying to be something other than what you are, but you do need to present it in a way that is appealing to the people that are looking for what you have. If it's if it's only internal facing, then you're gonna miss the opportunity. Or if it's only external facing and you're not authentic, you're gonna miss the opportunity. You got to have both, I believe.
I want to loop back on a couple of points that really stood out. You mentioned empathy, but you mentioned where the real magic happens is when an organization, a bank, a credit union, communicates their true, authentic self. I'm not seeing that happen today.
I don't see a lot of it either. I see a lot of mostly a lot of the same thing over and over, which is you've got a community based, or and we work with primarily with credit unions. It's I assume, and you could say otherwise, but I assume it's pretty similar with banks, and especially with community banks. You've got a community based credit union that says we have great service and great rates. Come come join us, um, rather than, yeah, you know, digging deeper into what do we believe, what are we about, and what can we do that's special to serve people in a way that's different.
Why don't they dig deep? Why don't they do the hard work? I think even before you and I hit record, I had asked you a question and I was like, oh, let's just hit the record button because your response to me was like, you want to go deep. Like that's a deep question. And I've even in guests on other podcasts, I remember one podcast specifically, the host was saying, wow, you're going beyond the surface here. I'm like, yeah, because the surface the surface is boring. Like the surface, nothing grows on the surface, right? I mean, there's some ancient truth and there's some ancient wisdom here. Like for example, if you have seed and you have seed for plants and it falls down on the surface, you scatter it on the surface, it's going to die. There's nothing of substance for it to take root in. However, once you start to dig deeper into the soil and push those seeds down into the soil, that's where the growth happens. Why don't we, as individuals, as leaders of financial brands, why are we not, why don't we have the courage to dig deep and to do the quote unquote, the harder work, to go beyond the surface level parroting of commoditized marketing and commoditized sales of we have great rates, we have amazing service, we have a lookalike laundry list of these product features. And so as a result, we're all looking the exact same because in reality, we all are the same. We're all doing the same exact things. We take money in, deposits, and then we loan it out and we make some money on the interest there. Why don't we do, why are, maybe it's a choice. Why are we choosing not to do the deeper level work of where the real transformation happens, whether that's marketing, sales, because that's going to directly impact the work that you're doing when it comes to not just building a glorified online brochure, but truly building a website that sells that is then supported through quantitative analysis of A/B testing, messaging, calls to action, etc. What prevents us?
Mm. You were asking that question, and initially I thought, I don't know. And I think I may not know the full answer to why. But as you continued to talk and I thought about the question, um, I do have an answer that I think may explain at least part of it. And there's something called tyranny of the status quo. So, meaning that there becomes an established way of doing things, and it's very hard to break out of that established way of doing things, those established patterns. And so I look at that with credit unions, and there's a lot of tyranny of the status quo. So you know, credit union most credit unions are pretty old, uh, decades old, some even 100 years old, and in a lot of ways, they're still doing business the way that they've always done business. They think of the credit union as a uh, physical locations, physical branch locations, and people come to those branches to transact with them. And you know, the internet came about, and uh, they've sort of adopted it, but not, really are still more tied to those physical branch locations as being that's what the credit union is. And I think it's just been a very slow, like very slow adoption because of that tyranny of the status quo. This is like there's an idea of what a credit union is and what a credit union does. And in my experience, when with a credit union's website, I think most credit unions generally know how important that website is.
Mhm.
And tangent, I wouldn't say that that's true for people outside of marketing. I'll come back to that in just a moment. But um, I think they generally like when I show people how we do A/B testing on credit union websites. I typically get one of two responses. One is either like, "Oh yeah, this is something we want to do. We just don't don't have time for it, or don't have the expertise for it." And I think that's because credit unions are they're already caught up in doing these things that they've always done, and their time is drawn away from these things that are they're used to and comfortable with. And this is something new and different. And even though they know they should be doing it, uh, they can't make the time for it. Or people say, "Oh, I've never thought about you know taking this approach of ongoing optimization and A/B testing. Like I've done A/B testing." I talked to someone yesterday. They said, "Yeah, we've done A/B testing on social media ads and email, but I've never thought to do that on our website, and that's something we want to do." So I think generally marketers, uh, for the most part, know that they should be doing and want to be doing it, but there are other like their time is already so consumed with all these other things that it's a prioritization thing. And then coming back to my little tangent, I think that's true for marketers. I don't think that's as universally true for other people in like the C-suite of a credit union. I just talked with a credit union recently, and uh, one of their head leaders talking to them about the website, and I said, "Your website should be producing loans and deposits for the credit union. You should be able to see the growth that it's producing." And they said, "Oh yeah, we've never thought of our website in that way. We just thought we needed a website because you just got to have a website today."
Hmm.
Um, so I think, and it's usually marketing departments got to get approval from those leaders to do like to invest in anything. So I think for the marketing department and the like C-suite of credit unions and board of directors, there's an established way of doing things. And uh when there's a better way of doing something, it's not part of the status quo. I think that's at least part of the answer.
It's the cave of complacency, and I really appreciate it, and I want to give you space to really download your perspective. There's a couple of points I want to loop back around, and I think connect some dots from the things that I've been observing, the things that I've been seeing, because there's a lot of pattern matching going on. I've been studying the intersection of marketing, sales, technology, and human behavior as a digital anthropologist for the last 22 years. I started this journey as a 20-year-old back in 2002 when the internet was really in its infancy. I mean, the internet, you could make an argument that in 2002 was 7, 8 years old. 1994 is the point of time that I say that the internet began to reach the mass consciousness of humanity. So here we are, wrapping up 2024, 30 years past 1994. But the behavior and the beliefs of those, more so back to your point, specifically at the executive level, at the board level, that are driving the future vision of the organization, which then influences how marketing invest in the future, is it's the most dangerous thing because they're operating in a world that no longer exists. That world will really begin to shift in 2020. And at the
Mm.
executive and the senior level, I do hear, even at the board level, well, when are things going to go back to normal? When are things going to go back the way that they were? And we all know, and I think they know. I really do. They know intellectually, they know philosophically that things will not go back. Emotionally, though, that's what they crave. They crave the emotion of safety and security. And that's because the MO of the financial brand leader is one, I think, who naturally seeks safety. They naturally seek security. Very empathetic of that. You mentioned empathy before. At the same time, I'm seeing a micro exodus of marketing leadership that are
Mm.
just, they're tired. They're burned out. They're frustrated fighting the old. I mean,
You mean
within the,
like they're leaving banks and credit unions to go work elsewhere? Is that what you mean?
they're either A, leaving banks and credit unions to go work elsewhere, and some have been in the vertical for at least 10, 15 years. They're either A, leaving, or B, they're being asked to leave because they're causing too much trouble.
Mm.
So they're done. They're done fighting the old. And there's some ancient wisdom, once again, that we can start to pattern match. It was Socrates who once said that the secret to change, true transformation. I mean, I wrote Banking on Change, published it in April 30th of this year. The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And I think that's what's happening. And we're seeing that. We're seeing even, 10 years of quote unquote fintech. There's a handful, they're the minority. They are credit unions and they are community banks. They too are done fighting the old. And that's why they're focused on building the new. Whether that's launching a digital brand, like I recently interviewed the credit union that started up Hustle to focus on
Mm.
a niche market. Look at what Jill Castilla is doing, community bank, launching Roger.bank. Look at what MSFCU is doing, launching Alumnify and Collegiate. They're not fighting the old anymore. They're focused on building the new. And the reason I'm bringing this up is you're working with credit unions to help them build new websites. But how much energy is expended on fighting the old? When if we transition and transfer that energy to build the new, what value could be created? But the belief, even back to your point of the executive was like, well, we never thought of it that way. It's all coming to how you started this conversation. Hey guys, I am sorry to interrupt the conversation with Derek, but I wanted to take a minute to let you know about the 2025 Digital Growth Accelerator program that we have launched, which is exclusively for growth-minded financial brand marketing, sales, and leadership teams who want to thrive and not just survive in 2025. So if this sounds like you, text me right now, 832-549-5792, because when you join the 2025 Digital Growth Accelerator program, we're going to assess your customer journey to identify your biggest blind spots, while at the same time, we're going to secret shop your website so that we can help you uncover unseen gaps that are costing you millions in loans and deposits. You're also going to learn how to develop a strategic growth plan through the 12 classes that are found inside the Digital Growth University, plus 4 quarterly masterclass workshops. 4 quarterly masterclass workshops that I will teach will show you, exactly what you need to do next to eliminate common blind spots that we have found within customer journeys, the member journeys if you're at a credit union, so that you can continue to level up your loan and deposit growth every 90 days. Finally, you're not going to be taking this journey to optimize your customer journeys alone. That's because you're going to be gaining accountability while expanding your network through monthly masterminds that I'll teach and an annual event that brings together a group of growth minded leaders who are all committed to connecting, to learning, and to growing together. So, if you are ready to thrive and not just survive in 2025, text me right now, 832 549 5792. Let's have a quick conversation to see if this is a good fit for you, if this is a good fit for your team. Let's get back to the conversation. The first step of human transformation is to see things from a different perspective, which is one of the reasons why I want to shift the conversation here ever so slightly, but it's on point. You have recently launched a new tool, Metrify,
Hmm.
to provide objective perspective into the performance of a bank or credit union website. What is Metrify? Why do you launch it?
Yeah, let me start with why we launched it. And this actually goes back to a little bit of history here. It's something that you touched on a few minutes ago. When Bloom CU started uh, 9 years ago, really the way that we got our start is uh, we we before then we were doing digital marketing for any number of different types of companies and all sorts of industries, and we ended up getting connected with a credit union, and we built a website for them, and it was a good project. And uh, the credit union marketer afterward came back and said, "Hey, it won a diamond award." And we said, "That's awesome. What's a diamond award?" And found out later that that's a prestigious award in the industry from CUNA at the time. And uh, eventually that led to said, well, let's try working with another credit union. And so we did, and then another one, another one. Eventually we said, all right, this is where we want to be. We want to focus on working with credit unions because we can see there's a lot of opportunity here for bring the skills that we have to help credit unions make better websites. And initially our business was all about uh, designing beautiful websites that win awards. That is how we got our start. And there was a time when uh, the websites that we were designing were winning, if not most, the plurality of diamond awards. Like our clients were the largest share of winners of diamond awards, and we were proud of that, and that was awesome. But eventually we realized, winning awards is great, but that's not really that's not really the main point here, is it? Because for years I asked credit unions this question as part of when they were initially talking when I was initially talking with them about designing a new website. I'd say, okay, so let's say you have a new website. When all is said and done, what result do you want? What do you want it to do for you? And they would say, well, at the end of the day, we want it to help us grow. We want to get more members and borrowers. And there's a disconnect there. Using the website as a tool for growth, which is like that's what the credit union needs. That's the objective of the credit union. And winning an award doesn't have any
They're at
maybe
they're at odds. They're at
yeah there
odds with each other. Or they could
yeah
be. They could be at odds.
like they could go together, but there's no direct correlation there. And so uh, we realize we really need to dig into the performance of the website. What's actually oh, is the website actually leading to loans and accounts, or is it not? And that's what we need to be optimizing for. And last year internally we saw, like, in working on growing our business, we had to go on this exploration because we were like, okay, we're good at designing beautiful websites, uh, but there's also, this more analytical approach to it. There are all these different things that we could do to try and grow. What do we actually believe in? What do we care about? Are we just chasing money? Um, you know, having money is a good thing, but you reach a point where it doesn't help you make the right decisions about where to take an organization. Um, I buy into the idea that if you pursue something that you really believe in, that money will follow and be a byproduct of that. And so, as we dug deep into that, we realized, the thing, and you touched on this a couple of times, and uh, the way that I would say it is, I, I believe that truth changes how people see things. When presented with truth, it changes people's perspective, and we want to seek the truth in whatever we're doing. And we happen to be building websites for credit unions and optimizing websites for credit unions. And if that's what we're going to do, I want to know the truth about what is the website all about, and what does it actually need to be doing? How does it need to be built in a way that it achieves the purpose of the website? And that's what led to Metrify,
Mm.
because we said, all right, we have to have a way to uh, track the performance of a website, which we've been doing that for years with analytics. But really, the key thing that Metrify does that we haven't been able to get effectively anywhere else is, so imagine you've got analytics set up, you're tracking everything, you can see your conversion funnels for how the website's performing, but then there's this question of, okay, those are the numbers. Are the numbers good? I don't know. Like the way that we've been able to know if the numbers are good or not is because we work with a lot of credit unions, and we can see the performance that this credit union is getting versus this credit union. And so it's from that comparison that we can say, okay, well, yeah, you're doing average, or you're above average, or you're below average. And so really what Metrify does is you've got you've got funnel analytics for all of your products on your website: auto loans, checking accounts, savings accounts, etc. And what Metrify does is lets you compare the performance of your funnels with other credit unions, be able to say, yeah, you're performing above average, or hey, you're performing 50% below average. And if you could get just to be on par with the average, that's going to mean $1 million more per year that are coming through this funnel. And that's that's the essence of, uh, that's really where it begins with Metrify, and that's why we built it in the first place.
We've got a common theme and we have a common pattern in this conversation. Human transformation starts by seeing things differently. All transformation starts by telling the truth or seeking the truth. And in this particular case, you're looking at objective performance of how a financial brand's website is performing comparative to peer. As a result, you're able to identify where they're losing loans and deposits.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is where things get really funny, because enter the human factor. The human factor being marketing teams, sales teams, leadership teams, executive teams within an organization. Because I've been in this situation. We're looking at things a little bit differently. We're looking at things from a qualitative with website secret shopping studies. So it'd be very interesting to take the qualitative, the thick data, smaller data set, but informs the emotional aspect of why people are doing what they're doing or not doing on a financial brand's website when shopping for a product. Then cross-reference that with the big data, the large data set that informs this is what people are doing or not doing. And then you've got this really interesting XY axis, if you will. So you're helping people see different. We're helping people see different. When someone sees different, their thought patterns begin to change. It's just a natural byproduct because it's very hard to unsee what you have seen. So you begin to see different, you begin to think different, and this is where the biggest struggle lies. I don't have the answer. All I know is I'm able to diagnose where the problem and the pain is. Because whenever I'm working with specifically marketing teams, sales teams, and leadership teams, and I ask them this question, we do a workshop, team alignment workshop. And they're talking to me about, well, this is where we're at as an organization. And then this is where we're wanting to go over the next 12, 24, 36 months. I'm like, you're painting a beautiful picture of the future. I love the clarity that you have. But then we have this gap. We have this delta. Like, you want to be here, you're here, you want to go here. You see different, you think different. And then I ask them what the third step is in human transformation. And they know that there are 4 steps. 98, 99% will immediately reply. And sometimes you can hear the attitude because they think I'm being patronizing and I'm not. They're like, well, of course I'm going to be different. I'm going to act different. I'm going to do different, James Barber. Like, why are you asking us such a silly question? And I give them space. And then they're like, is that the right answer? Because I don't say anything. And I go, you're on the right path. But that's step number 4. Something has to bridge the gap between the thought and the action. This is the human factor. It's the feeling. It's the emotion. It's the desire to do different, to be different, to act different, to apply the new knowledge, to apply the new insights, to apply the truth, to take action with the truth. I don't always see that being the case. In fact, I see some people double down on the biases that they have, and they want to fight the truth. They want to cling to what they know instead of letting go and taking a new path. In your experience, when you present this information, how is it responded to? How do people respond? How do leaders respond? Do they take action? Do they fight it? Do they avoid it? What do they do?
Yeah, the immediate reaction is usually, wow, this is awesome to see the performance of our website in this way and to see how we're performing compared to other credit unions. And it seems like there's that initial aha moment, but then I guess I've seen different scenarios after that. So we have existing clients that we work with on an ongoing basis where they've already signed up and committed to improving their website on an ongoing basis. We're doing ongoing A/B testing with them, and we've some of our best clients when we've asked, what's the best part of working with Bloom CU, they've said it's the ongoing optimization, the ongoing A/B testing. Our website's getting better and better over time, and so I think they get it at this point. They've seen the results. So when we can show them that type of data, they love it. It's great. But then I've seen another group with financial institutions that are not our clients, and like they'll see that data, they'll see that gap in their performance versus where they should be in performance. And that, by the way, that gap is I've only ever seen that it equates to millions of dollars in additional assets per year. I've never seen it not be millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Um, so, and for bigger credit unions, sometimes it can be huge gaps. Tens of millions, maybe $100 million, and but then like just recently, I've had there were some credit unions. They're like, okay, yeah, let's do some A/B testing, and like, great, let's do it. And then um, we send them an agreement. We're about to get started, and they email me later and they say, hey, we've changed our mind. Well, they didn't say they changed our mind. We like this is all great, but we're really busy with this other stuff. So we're gonna have to come back to this later. And from one side, I get like you've got to prioritize what's everyone's got so many things on their plate, and so I I appreciate it when someone tries to prioritize what they think is most important and let go of things they think are less important. But on the other hand, I'm like, do you know of something that quantifiably you're losing millions of dollars, or that like the opportunity is right in front of you? And I'm pretty sure the answer is no to that. And so I I don't fully understand um, how you could see a tangible opportunity like that and then uh, not take advantage of it, especially when here's an additional detail uh, for we've started to offer performance based A/B testing. So we say you don't even pay us anything if we don't win. That's what I had offered to them. So it's like,
They have
here's a
nothing to
big
lose. You've
opportunity.
removed
We'll,
all risk. You've removed all risk from the equation. You've shifted
yeah.
all the risk to you. And I tell you, I've been thinking about this myself and have had some conversations to where we'll call it 80% of the risk for give us a share of the pie. Because back to your point, these are millions, tens of millions, or hundreds of millions of dollars of lost opportunity. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I want a piece of that pie. Like,
Mhm.
give me $1 million and I'll figure out a way to get you 10. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's a very fair proposal. But what's happening? Because you're obviously thinking the same thing. So you're doing the performance-based A/B testing, or you're
Mhm.
proposing to do
Right.
performance-based A/B testing.
Right.
What's happening?
Well, so far, um, I mean, again, we do have a number of clients that we're doing A/B testing, and they're loving it. Um, we've been delivering ROI reports. Say this is how much in additional assets you got from our A/B testing. This is what it means for the bottom line for profit for the credit union, and this is what we charged. And we always want that to be a good positive number, and it generally is. So there's that, but then uh, other responses. We've got some like, well, I'm too busy to do that. Um, or we've also heard, well, performance based. I mean, we don't know how to budget for that, so we can't do it. And I'm kind of like, well,
You're gonna pay us out of your
you want
you're gonna pay us out of your gain. Like, there's nothing to
right,
budget for.
exactly. It's like, well, you didn't budget to have an extra $10 million either. So I mean, I want to be empathetic as well to say, like, okay, well, pick a budget and we'll work within that budget. That's fine. So you can plan for it.
Yeah.
Um, I think you know I think there are there are challenges that we've run into with some um, you know talking about this with some credit unions, and and others that have been accepting, and they're seeing the value of it. I actually, one of my coworkers the other day, um, I I just had one of these experiences where someone said, "Oh, we're too busy right now," and I went to my coworker and I said, "Am I taking crazy pills?" I literally asked him that. I said, like, what we're doing is extremely valuable, right? We're showing people exactly with Metrify, we're showing them exactly where they have an opportunity for improvement compared to other credit unions. That's super valuable. We're showing you how much in assets you're currently getting through your website, how much you could be getting, and breaking that down on a funnel by funnel basis. And then we're saying we will do the work to help you improve this,
Mm.
and we have a track record of doing that, and we're going to deliver positive ROI to you. And like, how does anyone say no to that? And he was like, "No, you're not taking crazy pills. Like, thank you. I just need some validation in the moment."
No,
And
I'm going to hop in real fast
yeah,
because what you're talking about, I've seen this myself. I've seen this for 22 years. I've written a book about it, Banking on Change, right? Like I wrote Banking on Digital Growth. Here's the blueprint. Here's the strategy. Go do all of this stuff because it works. Like at the time, I had 10 years worth of validation that these strategies that have stood literally the test of time because it's the strategic model. The tactics will change, but the strategy remains the same. It's like when you build a house, you want to build a house with a strong foundation so that that house is going to last, 30, 40, 50, 100 plus years. Of course, over time, you're going to change the paint on the wall and probably rip out the floor and do some optimizations and whatnot, very similar to what you're talking about here with the work that you're doing. But if I go back over the last 22 years, because I mean, the first 10 years of my business was doing the exact same work that you were doing. We were building bank and credit union websites. We exited that game in 2012 because it literally almost cost my marriage because I was the one literally taking the crazy pills and they weren't crazy pills. I struggled with some addiction around that time because I had that much stress. Like I'm making recommendations. I want to help. I have a heart to help, but you're not listening. And then I had to bring an advisor in who pointed me down the path that we're on today. And here I am now, 12 years after that, almost at the same existential crisis of why are you not changing? Here's the data. You're data people. Here's the data. And all I can think of, Derek, really, all I can think of is as we start to wrap up here, it's like you go to the doctor and the doctor takes your blood, runs the diagnostic work, and says, Derek, here's the data. If you don't change your lifestyle, if you don't change your behavior, you're going to die. Let me tell you something, man. 20 years ago, there were about 15,000 credit unions, ballpark, about 15,000 community banks. Here we are at the end of 2024, 6,000 credit unions, 6,000 community banks. Here's the data. Derek's giving you the data. I'm giving you the data. It's your choice of what you're going to do. Because if you don't do what you need to do, you're going to die. You're not going to be here. And maybe you don't care because you're not going to be here 5 years from now. But what about the people that are working for you? They're on your team. They still have a future ahead. Do it for them. Make the commitment to make the changes with the data that you've been presented to give them a future. Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And that's all I can think of. I know people in my life, in my family, that have been given diagnosis that if they don't change their behavior, they're going to die. And guess what? They still eat like crap. They're still sedentary. Nothing changes if nothing changes. It used to drive me up the wall, even with my family. I'm like, why? Go for a walk. Stop getting McDonald's. Make your food at home. You can't change
Yeah,
people that don't want to be changed.
yeah. I think tyranny of the status quo. I think it's. I you and have talked about this before, like in that couple of roundtable sessions a while ago. I think it is crystal clear that banks and credit unions are being disrupted, and anyone that wants to read about that, um, one of the best-selling business books of the last, I don't know, 10 or 20 years is Clayton Christensen's book, The Innovator's Dilemma. I
Great book.
I read that within the last few years, and I went, my brain exploded because I was like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what is happening with banks and credit unions.
Yeah.
A new method of interacting with members and customers has arisen that is not based on physical location. And the younger generation, like my generation and younger, uh,
Context,
does
how old
not
are you? How old are you?
35.
You're 35. Say I'm 43. I got 8 years on you. We're of the same generation. We're seeing the same exact things. I guess a good analogy, and I've never thought about that until you just put this into my field of vision, because I'm the innovator's dilemma. I think the period of time we're in right now is like a farmer in the 1800s who wanted to continue to plow their crops by hand and not start thinking about all the machinery that could optimize their farming capabilities, because they loved farming by hand. It made them feel good. Your feelings don't matter. The facts matter. The data matters. And if the data is showing that there's an opportunity to recapture, or there's an or if the data shows you're losing millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of loans and deposits, and you're not taking action for that, you're putting your institution at risk. And from everything that I know about financial brand leaders, they're risk adverse. So now I'm very confused as to why they fail to take action. What's your recommendation as we start to wrap up? Because we've hit some really important points. We've gone long. This is probably one of my longest podcast conversations, and I really appreciate the dialogue. I really appreciate the discourse. Thank you so much for
Yeah, thanks
going
for
where
inviting
we've
me. It's been
gone
awesome.
today.
I
What do you recommend?
Yeah, my recommendation. I'm going to say something that mm, a lot of credit unions and banks may not like to hear. So I'm going to go off of uh, innovator's dilemma. What this is, I'm just going to say exactly what Clayton Christensen would say if he were here in my shoes. What he identified is when it becomes crystal clear that an industry is being disrupted, there are only two options for survival. Uh, you either have to you have to take the existing organization and undergo radical change. And that like we've been like repeating over and over again, tyranny of the status quo, change is hard. And I'll be more specific about the changes that banks and credit unions would have to make. But that's you either have to go through radical change. It's extremely difficult. And in the study that Clayton Christensen did, where he was looking at, uh, 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 I'm forgetting the name at the moment, like microchip manufacturing industry, uh, and I think he only found one case of an organization successfully going through the transition, and for the CEO, it was like the hardest transition, like the hardest thing he'd done in his entire career, and almost didn't make it. You either have to go through that transition, or you have to launch a new brand that follows the disruptive pattern that eventually cannibalizes the old organization. So what that means in real terms for a financial institution, uh, the change that they would have to go through is they would have to get rid of all of their branches, all of them, and they would have to have a specialized offering that serves a specific niche of people providing products and services that people cannot get anywhere else. That's like changing the entire organization, because right now their products are mostly commodities, and the credit union is they think of it as their branches. So, like, can you imagine that means giving up all your branch locations, not having tellers, not having all the people that support the brand. Like, that change is so. Can you even imagine? Like, if you're the CEO of a bank or credit union, you decide this is the path you have to go. You go to the board, like you're crazy. We're like, we're not doing that. That's like not. It's like basically destroying the whole institution and remaking it.
I want to hop in because there's a couple of points for cross pollination here. Number one, this is exactly what happened to Kodak. And the Kodak story is overplayed at this point, but there's a truth here. And the truth was Kodak had an early prototype digital camera back in the 1970s. I wrote about this story in Banking on Digital Growth. The leadership failed to see the opportunity because they knew that if they were to, build a business around digital, even in the early days, it would cannibalize their print business. They didn't have the courage to at least explore, experiment, invest 10 to 20% in the future. And I think your idea of launching a secondary brand, a pilot, I know specifically, and I can't talk because I'm under NDA. I can't talk about this organization, but I've worked with them. I did strategic planning with them. And this is a credit union, maybe billion and a half, no more than $2 billion credit union. That a strategic initiative over the next 12 months or so is to launch a secondary brand as nothing more than a pilot. And they know, their CEO knows, their executive team knows, their board of directors, they're all on board. This could utterly fail. But what they have already determined that if it fails, quote unquote, and I think that's a matter of perspective, they have already made the decision they're going to take every single learning and extrapolate that out and move that into their current brand so that they can take those lessons and iterate and move faster. So there's the Kodak piece of this. Netflix, on the other hand, went through 3 transformations over the course of about 15 years. Netflix founded, I think it was around 1997. 10 years later, they cannibalized their DVD delivery. They went streaming first. That pissed off a lot of people. Go back and read, the headlines from 2007 when they went streaming, changed the whole model. That was a 10-year period. 2007 to 2013, they've now cut the innovation cycle down to 6 years, so almost half. They launched a new initiative when they launched the very first on-demand Netflix, made for Netflix production, which was House of Cards. Netflix is no longer just a streaming entity. I mean, they are a media content creation platform. I mean, there are made for Netflix films, they're made for Netflix shows. But had Netflix not had the courage to explore, experiment 20% for the future, who knows where they would be today. So I think those are 2 very practical examples of what it takes. When I hear what your recommendation is, once again, I got a lot of empathy too. I call blasphemy. That's impossible, Derek. You can't do that. We can't do that. Self-limiting belief. Self-limiting beliefs are going to be the downfall of any leader, of any organization. It's a self-limiting belief. Because my question is to be a curious kindergartner. Why? Why can't you do that? Edward Schopenhauer was a philosopher from like the mid 1800s. He was German. And one of the things he said, and I see this, and I tend to play that role when working with organizations, because I have no emotional vestige into the organization. So I'm able to come in as an objective outsider and just call things how it is. A lot of times I upset people, but I do it because I care. I do it from a place of kindness. One of my mentors told me over the years, you have to be ruthlessly kind, because you can't just be kind. You can't be ruthless, but you can be ruthlessly kind. Do it from a place of love. Do it from a place of caring. And love, the way I look at love, is to will the good of another human being. And I think that's what you and I are doing here. We want to will the good of these organizations. We want to will the good of these marketing teams. We want to will the good of the leadership teams, the executive teams, the boards of directors. But one of the things that, when I think about the recommendations you just shared, I think of the work of Edward Schopenhauer. And he said, anytime a new idea is introduced, it goes through 3 different stages. Stage number 1 is that new idea is laughed at. It's ridiculed. We make fun of it. Oh, that's impossible. That's never going to happen. Ha ha ha. They're crazy. The second stage, as that idea begins to sprout roots, because now that idea has been planted in the ground, it puts down roots. It's violently opposed. It is fought in one way, shape, form, or fashion. And I think that's where we think about Socrates. How much more, because it's back to the point, the secret to change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And your recommendation is putting up a pilot, secondary brand, build the new.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to be a fight. And I think knowing these stages is so important, whether you're a marketing team, a sales team, a leadership team, an executive team, a board team. Knowing these stages is so important because you're going to know where you're at. The third stage, that new truth is self-evident. What took us so long? Like, why didn't we think about this before? And you're like, we've had this conversation. We've been doing the thing. And then very quickly, 3 months, 6 months, a year, we forget what it was like before, because that becomes the new present state. That becomes the new reality.
Mm-hmm.
See different, think different, feel different, and then you're going to act, be, do different. So when I think about the organizations that you're working with, those who are taking the guidance, seeing the gaps, running the A/B test, that's because that's their habit. Those that are resistant or saying we don't have time, this, that, and the other, it's because they're stuck on thinking. They're seeing different. They might even be thinking different. But to bridge the gap between the thought and the action comes down to the feeling, the emotion. That's the coaching element. That's the human factor. That's the wild card right there. That's why I appreciate the conversation that you and I have had today, because I'm hoping that someone who's watching, someone who's listening, if we can just inspire action with one person, it's made the last hour plus of value for them. So Derek, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for sharing time. Thank you for going along with me today. If someone wants to continue the conversation that we've started here, what's the best way for them to reach out and say hello to you?
They could either email me, Derek at bloomcu.com, DERIK at bloomcu.com, or they can go to bloomcu.com, and there's a button on there that will let you get in touch with us. You could send a message there and could schedule a time to meet with you that way.
Connect with Derek, learn with Derek, Grow with Derek. Derek, thanks for joining me for another episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you.
As always, and until next time, be well, do good, be the light. As always, and until next time, be well, do good, be the light.